House v. NCAA is kind of the story in college athletics because it's fundamentally shifting how college athletics function, Drake. And I've talked recently on the show about the widening gap between the Big Ten and the SEC. I think most people are aware of that. And I think this ruling fundamentally impacts that in that it makes the gap larger. I don't know if it's changing everything necessarily other than, how athletic departments function. But every athletic department having to set aside $20 or $30 million a year to pay athletes now and in the past who should have been paid. To me, this is just another obstacle for the Big 12 and the ACC to try and close the gap with the Big Two actual power conferences.
It starts with money. That's the first thing you need is money to be able to survive based on what the settlement wants. Settlement wants money, and it wants you to dole out more money, not just in the next 10 years, but also in the next 10 years to athletes. $20 million a year or somewhere in that range will be the cap. Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Texas, they say, great, 20 mil, we can do that. Revenue sharing between colleges and their athletes is easy for most universities in the Big Ten and the SEC. Past that, doling out a couple $1 million a year or losing a couple $1 million a year from the NCAA for those schools does not matter. If I am Iowa State today, if I am BYU today, I look up and say, oh, 20 million a year? I don't know if I can allot that. And that is where the gap grows, specifically among schools. The conferences themselves, there are Big 12 programs, Utah, Kansas, TCU, that can find ways to reallocate funds to pay $20 million a year. Iowa State cannot do that. That is where the true gap builds, is the back half of the Big 12 cannot do what the front half can't. And where does that also grow a gap? In the conference individually. Now, Kansas State looks up. Kansas looks up and says, I can do this. I can do $20 million a year to my student athletes. I can pay off what the NCAA owes and asks of me. And then Cincinnati holds the hand up and says, look, guy, I can't come close to that. How do I now compete with other schools in my conference that can? I'm not sure if that works.
The nightmare scenario in college athletics in the future is the Big Ten and the SEC break off from everything. That this House case and the money being allocated, it feels at least like the NCAA is getting a decent deal because they're not going to have to pay all of the damages owed to the plaintiffs and those affected by the lawsuit here, which are past college athletes who should have been able to make money off their NIL and were not able to, or should have been making money as employees of the department. However, the legal jargon all works out. Yeah. Do you see this at all as a potential first step towards the Big Ten and SEC trying to just further leave everybody that's not a major player in college athletics behind?
Yeah, the first thing, I'm glad you said first thing. First thing I thought of when this was on the table is SEC or Big Ten, from Petit to Sankey. You look at this and you say, I don't know if I need that anymore. I don't know if I need a governing body to tell me what I have to do. And Charlie Baker 6 months ago, his plea to the SEC and Big Ten was, look, if you guys stay put and we eventually go to revenue sharing, there's almost this autonomy amongst conferences where you make your own rules. He said, NIL, transfer portal, like you guys convene on this. Let's all be hand in hand in the effort. That is, to me, a desperation plea to keep the SEC and the Big Ten happy. Almost, you make your own rules as long as you're still underneath the NCAA. How long does that apply to the Big 12 and the ACC? Forever. You need it to. You need that overhead to stay alive. The SEC and the Big Ten are bigger than the NCAA. Spencer, if tomorrow we did Locked On SEC versus Locked On NCAA as two podcasts going head to head. I know that's apples to oranges, but for a Locked On scenario, right? Think about it. There's one entity there that people love and chant at games. No one's yelling NCAA at their various football.
It's got 4 letters. You can't even make a good chant with it, right?
No way to
SEC has got a rhythm. ACC, go Big 12. Like you can come up with. I just came up with all those except for SEC. But yeah, you get the point. Like joking aside, it just doesn't work. And frankly, I think the silver lining to this outcome
There's silver lining?
is the NCAA sticking around? If the NCAA was footed with this entire bill, Drake,
20 billion,
2.7 billion total in damages. If it was all laid at the feet of the NCAA, it could have just gone away, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is a term we all know for reasons I can't figure out because none of us are lawyers.
If we go here, the NCAA, had they not settled, would have been out, if they lost the case, 20 plus billion due tomorrow. At that point in time,
20?
Oh, yeah. 20
I thought the max damages were going to be around like 4.
Oh, no. NCAA wise, they've been owed 20 plus billion. That's what they settled. 2.7 was the baseline on the settlement.
Okay.
So 20 would have been the, hey, and that 20 is due tomorrow. Then we file bankruptcy. 4, they would have probably filed bankruptcy. And that's a bad day.
Yeah, and the reason that would be bad is because then you'd have a power vacuum in college athletics. And many of you might say, well, we already have one. It would be worse. It would be far. You think the Big Ten and SEC are running things now, and they've certainly flexed their muscle with the payout structure of this lawsuit where they're making smaller leagues, some that don't even have football, many that don't have FBS football that are, losing money as their college athletic departments lose money on the net on an annual basis, and they have to backfill it with other costs of the university. They're making those leagues pay millions of dollars a year, and they need to have a seat at the table. Tom Wistersill, the commissioner of the Big Sky, was on John Canzano's radio show recently talking about that, saying, we're frustrated, we're disappointed because we just got footed with this bill for something that we didn't have anything to do with in the past, and then we didn't have a chance to vote on right here, right now.
Bingo. The Big East, Ackerby, the entire week, those
what are we doing?
They've been huge. They have been, hey, by the way, guys, we have no say in this, and we are doling out more based on our current revenue than anybody else, and that's not fair. And again, Ross Dellinger says the estimated $20 billion in damages would likely be payable immediately and not over 10 years like the current settlement is. That's where we almost were. We were almost to, hey, NCAA, it's due today. Goodbye.
Call Jeff Bezos for a loan at that 100%.
Point. This is already bad. It could have been worse. If you're the Big 12, you're not happy. The SEC and the Big 10 are going, 20 million a year? Sure, we can do that. 25 million a year? Why not? But again, if you're Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, even one of the original 8, not good. Not good for you.
I don't think it's pocket change for the SEC schools. It's just far more for the big brand schools. If you want to apply it more broadly,
in Starkville, they're not happy right now.
No, they can't be, because their total amount of athletic department revenue is not the same as LSU or Texas or Bama or Oklahoma or like all these places where you bring in many hundreds of millions of dollars. Like a lot of places have a net revenue of 60-70 million dollars, which is a lot compared to a lot of universities I know of and deal with at the mid and low major levels in this country for sure. But if you incur $20 million of additional costs, not everybody's got a really wealthy booster like in Oregon, for instance, where you can say, hey, can you go get $20 million? Or, hey, Tennessee fans, can we raise that? I'm just pulling names out of the hat at this point for the most part. But or Florida State, hey, we're working with private equity here. Hey, can we just can you just kick a little, there's $20 million extra our way? Is a lot more feasible for those places. That's why the gap, I think this is just another step. I don't think it's necessarily the primary. I think realignment's the primary way the Big Ten and SEC have pulled away. But we're just continuing to see these steps where they're just saying, we're the biggest, we're the most powerful, and you also need us. So what are you going to do about it?
The thesis for me, Spencer, is the more money you have, the more liable you are to be able to play by your own rules. And 10 years ago, that was possible with the money men in the SEC who are bringing the McDonald's bags across the way. Now, the McDonald's bag is open in the air. It is a transparent shopping bag where you say, here's your money, kid. And it's legal.
It's the clear bag you have to bring into Major League Baseball games now.
100%. It's kind of a fanny pack, though. Bag's a strong word. That's a bit too big of a word. And at this point, again, that's my thesis, is the more money you have, the more liable you are to make your own rules. And that is where the Big 12 and the ACC are cut short.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Great stuff as always. It's not all doom and gloom. College football will return eventually, but got to stay up to date on this stuff. We do the best that we can to keep you informed. Drake, thanks as always.
Spencer, always a pleasure.